Hey, it's Chris, and this is my iPhone 11 Pro and Max review. I'm gonna hit everything from the displays to the design to the cameras and everything in between. And of course, in true daily tech style, there will be timestamps down in the description so you can skip around to whatever's most interesting. Now, I'm gonna wrap up with one slight annoyance, something that's been kind of annoying since I got these set up. And I'm also gonna tell you at the end what would make the 11 Pro even more pro, in my opinion. Let's go. Before we get too deep into this review, let me let you know the phones that I'm gonna be working with this year. So every year I order 2 iPhones, one for personal use and one for business use. So my personal phone this year is the regular old iPhone 11. Why? Because I wanna be a man of the people. I know that as I'm reporting on this channel, most people are going to be buying the iPhone 11, not the Pro. So I wanna have the most hours in and experience with that to tell you about it. Because of course there's gonna be some follow-up reviews throughout the year. For my Pro device, I went with the iPhone 11 Pro, not the Max, just the Pro. I'm gonna talk more about that when I hit the sizes in just a little bit. But this makes sense because I'm gonna be using it in the studio and for content creation. And hey, it seems basically custom made for creators like me, so that's why. Now I know that the cameras are a big deal this year. Everyone's really talking about it. You probably wanna know about it. And I'm basically gonna spend the second half of this video talking all about the cameras, super in depth. So again, hit the timestamps if you wanna fast forward and skip ahead to that. But before we get there, there's lots of other things that I wanna talk about, starting with the design and the shape of these iPhones. So here we are again, 3 years deep into basically the same design that we got with the iPhone 10. Now next year is the year where we're expecting a big, huge, noticeable change in the iPhone's design. But this year, guess what? So far, I haven't caught myself at all thinking, wow, I wish that these iPhones, the 11 and the Pro, looked different, just for the sake of change, just for looking different from the previous year. I haven't thought that while I've been using it. The iPhone experience has been the iPhone experience that I've wanted and expected, and in no way has it been worse because this is the same design. Same design means that same notch is also back. And I'm gonna tell you this, like I've said in the past, I don't even notice it when I'm using my iPhone. So everybody making a huge deal about the notch being there. Guess what? I would rather have the notch with the Face ID that comes along with it, because Face ID is awesome and it's a little bit better this year, than to not have the notch and have some less secure, more janky face identification and security thing, right? Okay, I gotta mention the camera bump, and I wasn't even going to, but so many reviewers have been talking about it, and talking about it like it's so weird or a big deal. Like, look, you want the extra features that you get with this triple lens or dual lens or whatever iPhone you go with, but you're gonna complain with how the cameras look on the back? It's like the tiniest deal in the world. It's not even worth thinking about or complaining about. Most of the time, you're gonna be looking at the front of your phone on the screen. And for that matter, I'm glad that Apple at least looks different with their triple lens setup. Instead of lining them all up in a row, either horizontal or vertical, at least they did something different. Like, there's really nothing to complain about here. In fact, if you're complaining about it, it's like, what? Are you kidding me? I don't know. I could care less. Next, let's talk about the materials. So the iPhone 11, regular, non-Pro, is glass backed, and the glass is cool, but it's kind of slippery. The 11 Pro, however, has this new matte finish, which I love because it feels really cool, it feels really premium, feels really different than any other phone that I've felt. And also, so far, it seems to really be more scratch resistant. It doesn't scratch as easily as previous backs of iPhones, which is cool. But on the other hand, it's kind of too bad that this even exists because I'm just gonna be covering it up with the case anyways. Now, if you look at the 2 new phones, the 11 and the 11 Pros, you're gonna see that there's some different materials around the side. The Pros have stainless steel going around, and the regulars have just aluminum. Now, it's hard for me to say one is better than the other inherently, although some people are just gonna be like, it costs more, so it must be better on the Pro with the stainless steel. I do like the stainless steel look. I like the stainless steel Apple Watches too. I think it does look premium, it does look classy, but I can't say that I dislike the aluminum on the cheaper models. That still looks good. And you know what? It's lighter too. Although to me, I kind of like the heft that that stainless steel gives. Bezels. Both of these iPhones do have bezels. You can kind of notice them. They're not a big deal. It's really more of an aesthetic thing to get rid of those. And I really do hope that the next redesign does get rid of bezels completely, because it just would look really cool. It'd be satisfying to have those bezels disappear. But in day-to-day use, it doesn't affect your iPhone experience really at all. You're still gonna get in and enjoy your phone, your games, your media, whatever it is, and you're not gonna be like, oh man, these bezels are messing everything up. That's not what it's like at all. All right, let's talk about sizes. Now, this year, I've had a big shift in my thinking when it comes to phone sizes. So usually every year I rotate between getting the biggest size and the smallest size for my personal device so that I can, as a reviewer, learn what's different and kind of like report back to people. But here's the thing, it's my year to go back to the smaller size, and I've decided that I really like it, to the point where I may not go back to a larger phone size. Here's why. Because over the last year, I've really been on this kick where I want to go for portable stuff as compact and as powerful as possible, while for stuff that stays in my house or the office or the studio, I want to go bigger there because it's more permanent. So TVs, those can go bigger. Monitors for my computer, bigger, no problem, because those stay put in my residence or office or whatever. But for stuff that I'm taking with me, whether it's a camera or a phone or even the bag that I'm carrying stuff around in, I want that to be as compact as possible, because if I can help it, I don't want to be out in public and everyone's like, oh, that dude's a YouTuber. I want to be more stealthy and inconspicuous. And plus, it's just better to carry less weight and whatever. There's all these reasons why compact but powerful is a great combination. So for that reason, I am really enjoying the smaller size. I will say though that because the smaller Pro is actually smaller than the regular 11 by a little bit, and it is noticeable. If you hold them both in your hands, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, this smaller Pro definitely feels smaller than the 11. Then it's too bad for people who just want a smaller phone because it's harder for them to hold a bigger phone rather than just wanting something compact. It's too bad that they have to upgrade all the way to the Pro to get that smaller size. Now, battery life. This has to do with size, because this year, the 11 kind of maintains the battery life of the 10R before it, which is already pretty good. You get all day battery, although as a power user, I could usually kill it, but most people aren't me. The Pros, however, get 4 and 5 extra hours of battery, depending on which size you go with, over last year's iPhones. And that's a significant jump. Now, for me, 4 hours with the smaller model of Pro is plenty. I'm really happy with it. 5 hours is great, but that 1 extra hour, since I'm getting 4 already, is not enough to make me be like, yes, I want to get that max. I'm cool with 4. Let me mention this new midnight green color, because as I mentioned in my iPhone buying advice video, which I'll link up down below, because it has a lot more information than just what's in this review, and it's still going to be very useful if you're actually shopping for an iPhone. This midnight green, I was like, I don't know if I want that. And I didn't get it for my personal phone, even though it was the new thing, because I didn't want to get it and then regret it all year because I couldn't trade it back in or whatever. But now that I've got a couple in hand and have checked them out in person, I've actually accepted it. I've come to like it because it's not a traditional green in my view. It's actually more of like a gray green is almost how I would describe it. It's subtle and it's classy. And it's not like hunter green, it's not like forest green, it's its own kind of a green. Like Apple really picked a green that was different than anything I've really come across. And the key word is subtlety. Like I could have got this and been really happy with it, and here's why. Because there's so many iPhones floating around in the world, the iPhone is so popular that it's harder and harder to differentiate and distinguish and personalize. So the one reason that I would recommend this green is just to personalize and really have something that is different. So I was skeptical at first, but I've actually come around to this green now that I've seen it in person. I do like it. All right, let's talk about displays, because this is one of the big differences this year. If you're getting a Pro model, one of the things that's enhanced is this screen. So the iPhone 11, just a regular, has a great screen. Seriously. Great, but the iPhone 11 Pros have an insanely great screen. So it's like, what do you want? Great or insanely great? Let's put it this way. If you have both the iPhone 11 and the iPhone 11 Pro on a table in front of you and you're checking them both out, then sure, you're gonna be able to notice some differences. But If you just have the iPhone 11 and there's no pros around anywhere to be seen, then you know what? You're gonna be like, wow, this is a great display, and you're gonna be very, very happy with it. Like, just to be very honest, because I told you guys, I got the iPhone 11 as my personal phone this year, and the Pro is only for like studio and professional work, right? As I've been using it, because I've been spending more time with it, because it's my personal phone, I have never once found myself being like, man, this screen sucks, and I really wish that I had a better screen. I've never actually thought that. On the other hand, I did jump on my Pro, and I rented a 4K video that had Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos. And let me tell you, wow, the clarity was amazing. Things were super, super clear. The colors really popped, like just wow is the only way to describe it. And the brights and the lights and the darks, those were all amazing too. Now, the interesting thing is the sound, because it was great, but according to the iPhone 11 Pro's website, Dolby Atmos is supposed to make sound move around you in 3D space so that you feel like you're in the action. And I gotta say, it must be hard to do that with a phone. In fact, I don't know how they would do that, but they've tried to do that, and I can't say that it ever actually felt like I was in the middle of the action. Although the sound was great, it was like amazing for a phone, but the surround sound thing, I don't know. So for now, without further testing, let's just leave this as it was great, great sound. Now, if you go to the store and you're comparing the screens and you really want to see like what the differences are, aside from like looking really close and trying to see if you can see any jagged edges or pixels, why don't you pay attention to the blacks? So you got the black bezel around the side of the phone, and look at the wallpaper. On the Pro, you cannot distinguish a black part of the wallpaper from the black bezel. You can't tell where one starts and one ends because the blacks are true blacks. Also, I recommend trying the OLED screen on the Pro in a very dark room, like the darkest room you can, because that is where it really, really shines. Let's talk about the battery life next, because this is big this year. This is important. It's one of the big distinguishing factors between deciding the 11 versus the Pros. So this year, the iPhones actually didn't get any thinner. That's something that a lot of people have come to expect for various reasons over the years. They got slightly thicker, and I mean slightly. It's hardly noticeable. In fact, I didn't notice it at all while I was holding the phones in my hand. I haven't thought twice about it except for seeing the stats on paper. But what I did notice is the extra battery life that comes from that little bit of extra room and also some software optimizations. I noticed the battery increase big time. At least on the Pros. So for example, I went on a hike and I shot a bunch of photos and videos for this video to show as examples. And I went out early in the morning, went on this 2-hour hike, and the whole time I'm shooting photos, I'm taking videos. And I get back home and it's about noontime, lunch. And so 50% of the day is gone. This is the iPhone 11 Pro that I'm talking about. And I look at the battery and it's about 75% left. So 50% of the day gone, 75% of my battery left, and that was using it with a lot of intensity, lots of photos, lots of video. That's pretty impressive. Now, over the past year with the XS Max, which was my main personal phone, I was using Apple's battery case. It was gargantuan, it was chunky, I didn't love it by any means, but this year, that's gone. If they come out with a battery case for this, I'm not even interested. I might review it for the channel, but I don't plan on buying it, keeping it, needing it, wanting it, because 4 extra hours of battery on the Pro is plenty. Let's talk about the charging situation, because I prefer wireless charging when I'm charging my phone overnight, because at that point, who cares how fast it's gonna charge? It's charging overnight, I'm asleep. Wake up, don't have to worry about any cords or unplugging stuff. But there are times throughout the day when you're down on battery for whatever reason. Maybe you're traveling, maybe you're using a lot, whatever, where you need a quick charge. So it's great for the Pro phones this year that they've included that fast charger. And for that matter, it's about time, right? Everybody say it with me. It's about time. Because to be able to charge 50% of your battery in 30 minutes is not only important, but it's crucial for people who are relying on this phone for their work, for their job. I've heard other people complaining too, like, oh, it's not the prettiest or the smallest fast charger. I don't care about that at all. It's a fast charger, plug it in the wall, I'm not gonna be looking at it, it's not a sculpture. I'm just glad that it's there. All right, so now we get to the cameras, which is gonna be a very interesting section of this video. Highly anticipated, no doubt. So, the default camera. When you pull up the camera app, this is the one that shows up first. It's your default view out the rear main camera setup. You've probably been seeing and hearing a lot of buzz about photos on the iPhone looking amazing this year, stunning. People are calling it the best phone on a camera so far in 2019. Why? A lot of that has to do with the new Smart HDR. We've had Smart HDR before, high dynamic range, but it's been tweaked this year. There's been some improvements, and a lot of it has to do with the exposure. So your camera and your iPhone is smart enough to understand what is a face and what's not a face, and all the different elements that make up the composition of your images. And so what it's gonna do is light those slightly differently. It's gonna adjust that exposure to give you the best exposure for your skin or for an object that's not your face. And the overall effect is what's got everybody so excited. Like, a lot of the critics of the iPhone's cameras over the last couple years are starting to come around because of this feature. And they're saying, hold on, the iPhone is actually taking really great photos this year. But it's not just the Smart HDR. It's also the fact that we're getting more detail from our photos. So not only is the Smart HDR making it look better, more natural, like what you would see in real life, but you're also capturing more detail. And that is a serious 1-2 knockout combination. Is it noticeable in real life? Yes, it is, because I contribute some photos to this group that's like everyone can contribute, and there's people contributing from older iPhones, from Android devices, and when I posted the first iPhone 11 shot, it was a wide angle shot with the Smart HDR, it was a night and day difference, just a clear standout. The colors, the way it was exposed, the detail, yes, you will notice this. I do want to say, with this main camera, I've been noticing a lot of sun glare. And it doesn't matter if it's video or just a photo, but over and over again, as I went through this hike in particular, man, I could really see the sun glaring in from the corner or the top or whatever. But I didn't notice that nearly as much on the other two lenses, at least on the iPhone Pro. So the new ultra wide is amazing, astonishing even. It's hard to tell if this is my favorite thing or the extra battery life on the new Pros, because wow, I really love it that much. It's great for tight spaces, it's great for big groups of people, it's great for landscapes, it's great for all kinds of things. Oh, and I also realized as I was out hiking around that you can now take ultra wide panoramas, and that totally changes the landscape, so to speak. As you can see in this comparison, there's just no comparison, really. There's nothing else to say here. I just love the ultra wide, and I know you're going to also. So the telephoto lens is one of the big distinguishing features this year between the Pros and the regular iPhone 11s. On the Pros, you're gonna get a telephoto. On the regular 11s, you're not. You're just gonna get the normal view and that ultra wide view. If I had to choose between having an ultra wide lens and a telephoto lens on my phone, guess what I would choose? That's right, the ultra wide. Why? Because I figure I can zoom, for the most part, with my feet. Like, just walk closer to something instead of having to use the telephoto, which is only 2 times, by the way, 2x. But there are plenty of places, more times, when I can't scooch back in order to fit more in the frame. And just the angle of this lens, it fits so much more in. There's just no way I would want to have a phone moving forward without this ultra wide. I would definitely take it over a telephoto, and that's something that you need to factor in as you're thinking about, is it worth spending $300 extra bucks to get a nicer screen and a telephoto lens? And that brings us to night mode, which people have been raving about, talking about it so enthusiastically, and for good reason. It really is awesome. I love how smart it is. So I love that it just turns on automatically when it gets dark enough. And I love that it knows if you're holding it handheld to do 1 to 3 seconds worth of exposure time and frames or whatever. But if you have a tripod, it detects that, and it will shoot all the way up to 30 seconds worth of a shot and merge all those frames together to give you a better exposure. Now, the level of detail that this recovers is just ridiculous. So here's a great example of a statue. You can see the back of it, just totally black on the one side with night mode off. With night mode on, wow, look at everything that gets revealed. I guess you could say it really is a night and day difference. Sorry. I do want to point out that if anything's moving, then you're going to capture a little bit of motion blur. And for me, it's not a big deal. Like, it was windy, the trees were blowing around, the grass blowing around when I was taking these sample photos. But I thought it sort of looked a little bit artistic because I'm not getting this shot without night mode. So if I got to put up with a little bit of motion blur in order to get this shot that I couldn't have otherwise, no big deal. Like, I took a picture of this fountain and it kind of blurred out and got that motion blur going. And hey, maybe you can get kind of artistic with this. In fact, I think people will. I also want to point out it's kind of hard to take a night mode shot of yourself because you can't use the front-facing camera to do this because night mode takes advantage of that wider sensor on the back. So you can like set the timer and put it on a tripod and get it going that way. But then you gotta like sit still and don't move for however many seconds, and you don't know how many seconds it's taking. Yeah, you need somebody to take a picture of you if you're doing night mode. Long story short though, thank goodness this is here, glad it's here, and yes, I can say it truly does live up to the hype. Let me say a quick word about portrait shots, because even with the iPhone 11, 11 Pro, new this year, it's still a little bit hit and miss, like I think you've probably come to expect with portrait shots. The difference this year is that you can take portrait shots of pets and objects now, not just humans and their faces, so that's kind of cool. But it's like always, if you have a really nice background that's like clear blue sky, then yeah, you're gonna get a good cutout of the subject. But if you're against a rock or a denser background, something with a lot of lines or patterns, then yeah, it might be a little bit off. So for me, if I can only get one shot and the subject's gonna move or whatever, because it's a kid and they can't sit still, whatever it is, I don't rely on portrait mode. On the other hand, if you really want that portrait mode look, and you know that you can take a few shots to make sure that you can adjust the background and the subject to get it just right, then that's kind of what you gotta do. All right, let's talk about video, because I'm really excited about video as a professional video producer. And iPhones have always been the leader of the video pack for the last several years, and it's only getting better this year. And instead of talking all about it, what I'm gonna do is just show you this little montage of B-roll that I shot out on the hike. So the front-facing camera this year shoots 4K 60, which is great. And so that gives us a couple things. Number one, it gives creators who want to see themselves frame up a shot with the screen with a decent camera a good tool to put in their arsenal. And second of all, it gives us slow-fies. I don't know, they're here, they're a thing. I don't know how much they're gonna get used, but they're kinda cool. Before this video ends, I have to mention one thing as I was setting these new phones up that was really a pain for me, and it was very un-Apple-like for me. And hopefully it's just a little glitch and something that didn't affect a bunch of other people, but I wanna hear from you if you had something similar happen. But I rely on Apple Notes. It's what I use for my notes, for videos, for all kinds of stuff, personal and business. And I got like 1,700 notes in there right now because I've switched between so many note apps. Still, that's quite a bit of notes to be stored in there, and I need them to be able to do my work. And when I set these phones up and opened up Apple Notes to get started, 0 notes. And so it took me a while to kind of troubleshoot, and I had to go in, turn off iCloud Notes, turn it back on, and then it synced up a couple notes, but not everything. And I had to quit the app, reopen it, and let it sync a little bit more, quit it, reopen, sync, repeat, a bunch of times, like 20 times before it finally synced all of my notes. And I had to do that on all the phones that I just set up. Now, I do want to mention what would make the iPhone Pro a little bit more pro next year. We've had Pro devices from Apple for a long time. Well, what does Pro really mean? I actually asked Apple, and here's what they said. They said 2 things. Number 1, it denotes a best-in-class experience. And number 2, it's something that pros can really rely on to get their work done. Okay, well, the iPhone 11 Pros technically fit both of those descriptions just fine, no problem there. Even so, there's some things missing that I think a lot of people might have expected to get that Pro name, and that's what I want to talk about. First of all, a 120 hertz refresh rate, right? ProMotion on the iPhone. We have 120 hertz on the iPad Pros recently, and that's awesome. So for like gaming, and just because it's a Pro phone, you expect it to be the best in class, you would think that you would have something that competes with the best in class from like Android phones too. And there's some out there with really high refresh rates. So ProMotion display. Number 2, the Apple Pencil. Apple Pencil support, at least, because a lot of pros do have multiple Pro devices, whether it's a MacBook Pro and an iPad Pro. So to add an iPhone Pro and maybe you already have an Apple Pencil that has Apple Pencil support would be awesome. Really cool. Also, two-way charging on the back of your iPhone. That was something that was rumored, didn't actually ship this year. And the thing is, I only really want that if it can not only charge my AirPods, for instance, but also my Apple Watch. I had to say it too, USB-C. Lightning's cool, you can get by with it. But it's time though. We have USB-C on basically all the other Pro devices. It's time for USB-C to finally come to the iPhone now that it's a Pro. My last thing on my wish list for next year's iPhone Pro, especially with the big redesign coming. This might be possible, I hope so, although I could also see Apple taking a while to get this done. But now that we have an ultra wide lens, I also want an ultra zoom. There are Android phones out there with 10x zoom, with 50x zoom, like just telescopic, right? And so I'm loving my ultra wide. I'm glad that it's there, but 2 times telephoto zoom, it's starting to look a little bit wimpy. And so it's time for that to be upgraded absolutely next year. Let me wrap this up by just saying it's a really good time to be an iPhone user. It's a really good time to be just an Apple head in general. I have nothing against Android and anybody that chooses a different ecosystem, whatever. This is where I'm at. This is the stuff I'm into. And I feel like it's a good time. I'm excited. A lot of people were gonna sleep on this version of the iPhone. They just wrote it off before it ever came out. It's like, this is gonna be boring. And now there's all this hype about it because, whoa, the cameras are actually pretty cool. And whoa, the battery life. Here's the thing for me. I'm just speaking right off the top of my brain. I have the iPhone 11 and I can already tell I'm gonna be very happy with it as my personal phone throughout the year. So if you're thinking about getting it, are you like, am I gonna regret it? No, if it makes sense for you, if the size is good, if you don't need that telephoto, if you don't need the crazy screen, you will like it. I think you're really gonna like it. On the other hand, for pros, for people relying on it to actually do professional work, wow, you got some new toys and tools and it's totally worth it. If you're wondering if you're a pro and you look at the price tag and you're like, that's not for me, then you're probably not a pro. But the pros are like, yeah, I need that, I want it, and they get it. Again, I want to recommend to you my iPhone buying advice guide if you're serious about buying an iPhone, because I've given you my thoughts about these phones now that I've experienced them, but there's so much information and wisdom in that video. That's why I keep talking about it. So go check it out. Hey, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. Leave me your comments down below. Leave me your questions. For the first few days at least, I'll try to answer those. And after that, hopefully the community can kick in and help you out as well. Don't forget, you can follow @DailyTech, spelled Daily T-E-K-K, on Instagram and Twitter. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Later. That didn't work. Later.